Hello and welcome to chocolate lovers of all flavors, no matter where in the world you might be checking in from today. My name is Clay Gordon. Welcome to this edition of The Chocolate Life Live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of The Chocolate Life Live. My name is Clay Gordon, and we're here today, and the topic is going to be judging quality. This is a topic that I've talked about in a number of other clubhouse rooms, as well as on The Chocolate Life Live, and for me, it's become a very, very important aspect of the work that I do, and that's one of the reasons why I want to go over it again and share it to you today, especially about how the ideas of quality play into our notions of how we judge. And when I talk about judging in this context, I'm talking specifically about formal competitions, right? But before we get into today's topic, a couple of things. Number one is if you're watching live, you have the opportunity to participate in today's conversation. So you can go into the chat section or the comments of either Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, wherever you happen to be watching today. You can throw your comment up onto the screen or the question that you have. I'll be happy to answer it. And I want to give a shout out already to Mark and Yuri at Blue Spruce Chocolates in Colorado for their being here today and giving the shout out. So thank you very, very much for that. Before I want to begin, I also want to spend a few moments, not also, but I want to spend a few moments talking about this particular thing that came to my attention yesterday. And I need to thank Mackenzie Rivers at Map Chocolate for pointing it out to me, which is that the YLE School of Management has been doing some work looking at companies and if those companies are still doing business in Russia during the current during the war there. And the reason why, although I don't always like to inject politics, but there is a lot of politics associated with chocolate, especially the sourcing of cocoa. What I did want to point out is that there is a company called Grupo Savencia, and Grupo Savencia is a French company. It used to be called Bon Grain Group, and Bon Grain is the parent company of Valrhona. So on this particular study, the company, the parent group, Grupo Savencia, is given an F grade by the YLE School of Management in this study for continuing business as usual in Russia. And it's interesting to know. I would be interested to know what people think about this idea about injecting this kind of politics into the question of sourcing chocolate. But if you're out there, you're watching this today, you're watching this at some other day. Barry Callebaut is not listed here for one reason or another. If I search here and I look for Callebaut, there's no company listed, right? And so I'm really, really interested in knowing if anybody has information about Barry Callebaut or any of their subsidiaries, Puratos or any of Big Chocolate. That you can share with me. I've already been in contact with the people who are maintaining this list about some changes and some updates that I'd like to see. And so hopefully, and they've asked me if I can reach out to my network and provide any information about some of these other companies. So please, if you are familiar with any of these companies and whether or not they're doing business in Russia as usual, please let me know. But let's get into this whole idea of judging quality and what judging quality might look like. All right. So we need to start off by defining terms. It's really, really important in any discussion that we do is we start off by defining the terms. And so what do I mean when I use the word quality? Right? And what I'm talking about is that quality is a basket of attributes. It is a collection of things that we value, right? And every one of us has our own set of things that we value. So each of our own baskets will have a different set of attributes in it, right? And that each of us is going to value common attributes. So for example, your basket might include price, and my basket might include price. And for you, your definition of quality is going to be, it has to have a low price. And my definition of quality might be, it has to have a price above a certain level, right? So irrespective of the notion of absolute. So the idea being is that there is no absolute definition for what quality is and what quality isn't. And if we're going to have a discussion about quality, if you and I are going to sit down and we're going to talk about quality, what we need to do is we need to sit down and define what we mean when we use the word quality. Because, as I'm going to present, I believe that some aspects of determining the quality of chocolate are objective, and these might be technical evaluations. So we might say that the quality should have a particular particle size and a particular particle size distribution. So that would be an objective measure of quality. Then we might have experiential observations, right? And so we might say, for example, is this particular chocolate a well-made example of its kind? So if I'm having a 70% two ingredient chocolate bar, and I might say, based upon the fact that I have had experience eating dozens and dozens and dozens of things, would I say, it is tempered properly? It has got a good melt. These are objective measures which are based on experience, right? Gathered over a long period of time and tasting a lot of things and being able to say, this is a well-made example of what it is that I'm talking about. There are also subjective measures. And it turns out that most methods, most approaches to judging specifically are around this subjective notion, right? And they're descriptive. You put something in your mouth and you describe what it is that you're tasting, right? And so you say, okay, what are the flavors and the aromas that I experience, right? What are they? And then how do I experience them? Are they strong? Are they weak? Are they what that are expected? Are some notes off, right? Some things that, these are very, very subjective definitions about what it is that I'm experiencing. And ultimately what they want to do is you want to get down to do I like this, right? So is the combination of things that I am tasting pleasing to me, right? And this is going to show up in a score of something like, is this worthy of considering for an award, right? So we're going to give it an overall rating and it's going to be passed. Let's go put this thing into the next round. But these things are subjective, right? And what's important here to recognize when we're having these conversations is that every single one of us has our own sense of taste, and every single one of us has our own sense of smell. Each of us comes from a different food culture. And so, what I think of as a good flavor combination, if I grew up, for example, in Thailand, is going to be different from what a good flavor combination I think of is if I grew up in the American South. I mean, I just might not be familiar if I grow up in the South with, the sort of salt, sweet, vinegary kind of thing, except maybe in barbecue sauce in some states, right? But these are really, really important. They are, in fact, incredibly subjective, and they're a combination of the sensory equipment that we have, right, as well as the cultural milieu that we grew up in, right? This is important when it comes to judging, because what we need to do is we need to consider who the judges are, right, and their backgrounds, right? Really, really important to understand those things, right? Other examples of subjective measures of quote unquote quality that people think about are ones that are not necessarily directly related to what it is that I'm consuming, but they are factors which are around the outside of what it is that I'm doing. So, for example, is the product, does it have an ethical certification? So is it fair trade certified, or is it Rainforest Alliance certified? My definition of quality, extremely subjective, would be that it has to have a certification of this kind. Or I could say, in terms of the attributes in my basket, yes, fair trade certification is not all that important to me, but these are subjective measures when it comes to our evaluation of quality. So production methodology certification, is it organic? Is it kosher? Right? These are really, really important aspects for some people. Is it biodynamic, for example? Right? So I might have these attributes in my basket of quality, and I would say it's really, really important to me that it be organic. And somebody else might say, for me, I don't care of whether it's organic or not. Right? Dietary preferences. Is it vegan? Is it gluten-free? Is it, any one of a number of other dietary preferences? My definition of quality is going to be dependent upon how I think about a particular factor in that respect, right? So, again, it may not be important that it's vegan for me. I may be more careful if, I want it to be a low sugar or diabetic friendly. These represent subjective measurements or subjective measurements of attributes, which are a part of quality. And then finally, it was interesting, and I wanted to throw this in there, is the notion of conspiracy theories. So there are some people who believe, or there are people on the internet who propose, for example, that there is a secret government plot to replace all cacao trees in the world with GMO cacao trees. And therefore we need to push back against the notion that there is GMO in the product. I personally think that when expressed that way, it is a conspiracy theory. There is no GMO cocoa in production for the food supply chain in the world anywhere. It would be really, really expensive. It has been proposed that it be done in West Africa, but it's unlikely to happen because nobody's going to figure out where the money comes to pay for, and it would take 5 to 7 to 12 years in order for something like that to happen completely, if not longer. I mean, if I have a GMO seed, whether it's corn or soybean, I can replace the entire crop, right, from one year to the next because I have to buy new seed. And if it's GM, right, everything is done very, very quickly. But when it comes to cacao, because cacao takes many, many years to mature, the trees are expensive, and you have to go and plant thousands, at least 1,000 trees per hectare. I mean, I think about the number of hectares of cocoa that are planted in the world. This is a particular conspiracy theory that for me just doesn't wash. But it's interesting to consider how conspiracy theories could be part of a subjective evaluation for quality. I want to make an observation, which is really, really important. And this comes from me, someone who is a critic, who's been an observer of the industry for 20 some odd years now, is that how we characterize our opinions, right, influences others' perception. So, I responded on Reddit last week to somebody who was doing a review of a chocolate company's bars, and very loose with language, in my opinion. It was also very clear, although this guy might be a popular YouTuber, he didn't know much about what chocolate was about and how to evaluate chocolate. He didn't know what the flavors to, or really anything about chocolate, right? And so we need to be careful about how we characterize our opinions, right, and how we present them, because other people are going to be influenced by not just what we say, but how we say it to people, right? So really, really important to consider the language with which we use and the way it's constructed in order to be able to understand how we're going to be able to influence people, to be able to influence people about their considerations of the chocolate that they're going to be eating. For example, right, it would never occur to me to say, well, because you like white chocolate, you must not be a chocolate fan, right? And therefore, I don't care what you think because you like white chocolate, No, that you're not going to influence anybody by challenging their perception. You're only going to make them feel bad. And what's the point? This is not the point of criticism. The point of criticism is not to make people feel bad for what they like, right? To be able to suggest that if they were a true wine lover or a true beer lover or a true chocolate lover, they would like X and Y and Z. And that's not the way it goes. We need to be very, very careful about the language that we use. Okay. So to wrap up this part of the conversation this morning, and hopefully it will be a conversation. You're out there watching, right? Throw questions into the comments. I'd be happy to respond to them. If there's anything that's unclear, you'd like clarification on some topic you think I should have brought up that I didn't bring up, throw it into the comments and I will respond to it. So the final conclusion are, so when we talk about judging quality, right? The act is primarily an individual subjective process that has some objective aspects to it. So we can look at some technical things. We can look at some experiential observations around, if I say that I'm making a gianduja or praline à l'ancienne, an ancient style praline, I would expect it to have particular characteristics. Excuse me, does this particular product, praline, have those characteristics? Is it well made? Is it what it is that it says it is, right? The important thing is you really want to know, right, as much as you can about the biases of the judges and the reviewers, what they come in, what the presuppositions are, what they're coming into, right, their reviews and their observations with. So, for example, I'm really, really open about the fact that my introduction to gourmet chocolate was through the French company Bona, classically French, lots of added cocoa butter. Just I like that melty mouthfeel, that luxurious sense in the mouth. So I am not particularly or overly fond of 2-ingredient chocolates using beans, which are naturally very, very low in fat, because I don't like the melt. I think they're too crunchy. I don't like the texture. I think fat, when cooking, fat is flavor. And so I like things which have that particular mouthfeel. I'm incredibly open about it. When I think about my recreational chocolate eating favorites, it is dark milk chocolates. I'm a huge, huge fan of that entire category of dark milk. But it's important to know when you're looking at anybody who's rating, reviewing, who's giving you an opinion about chocolate, what their presuppositions and their biases are. So hopefully there is a body of writing and reviewing that you can go back to, you can take a look at and see what it is that they've said over a period of time. But if not, picking any particular review in isolation is a challenge. Ideally, what you want to do is you want to look at the reviews that this person does, and what you want to do is you want to eat the chocolate, right? Or whatever it is that they're reviewing, taste it, whatever it is, and find out how closely your opinions match their opinions. Just don't take it as gospel truth. Do you agree with what it is that they're saying? And then if you do this 5 or 10 or 20 or 50 times, whatever it is, you can say, oh, in general, my opinions, right, match this person's opinions. Right. And you can say when they recommend a particular product or they don't recommend a particular product, I think that they're reliable. For me, that they're reliable. Their taste matches my taste. Whereas, you might run a review and you might say, I disagree with most of what this person has to say about this and X and Y and Z. Right. And it's not a question of they're right and you're wrong. It's a question of that your perceptions differ. Right. And it's really all about, okay, if you like it, that's what's important, right? You're the one who's eating it, right? This critic over there who's writing about it, whoever's rating and reviewing it, they don't have your mouth, right? And so they're not eating it. So you can take what it is they're doing a guide, but do not give up your ownership of your own sense of taste, right, to someone else, right? So if you read a review, you're in Yelp, you go someplace, you pick out, everybody's got 5-star reviews of this place, and you say, here's the dish you have to have. You walk in, and you go, yeah, I'm not feeling it, right? The same way everybody else says. A couple of things. Number one, every restaurant, chef has an off night. So it just could be an off night for the chef, and it's not as good, right, as it usually is. And the other one is it's legit okay for you to say, I don't like this, right? It's not to my taste. It's not to my preference, right? But the important thing is not to say, what's wrong with me? Everybody else likes it. I don't. What's wrong with me? You don't want to abdicate ownership of your sense of taste to anyone else, right? Just if you like it, be unabashed about it. You like it. The important thing is understand what you like about it and why you like it, right? And this is how my goal as a critic over the course of the last 20 years has changed. In the beginning, it was me telling you that this is really good, right? And this is a good value, and this is what you should buy, and this is really bad, and you should avoid it, right? And now it's, here are some things you want to consider, and let's have a discussion about this notion of tasting something and finding out what it is you like about it or don't like about it. What is it? It's too sweet, it's too bitter, right? It has a flavor that you're not familiar with, it's burnt, whatever your perception of it is. You and I might have different perceptions of it. I've got a different background, I've got a different history. There are things in my basket of attributes that I value that you may not even know you want in your basket of attributes, right? Let alone understand how to value, right? And so this is where the dialogue, I think, was really, really important. For me, it's really, really fascinating to have a tasting event, to have two people sitting right across each other, taste exactly the same things. Often it's a pairing, so a chocolate and wine pairing, and to taste exactly the same thing and have diametrically opposed opinions of it. Somebody loves it, somebody hates it. And for me, this is where the discussion and the dialogue begins. Oh, why are two people who are tasting exactly the same thing having such different opinions of it? And it's in that exploration that we have an opportunity to learn, right? And for me, this is why thinking about quality as a basket of attributes, right? And understanding the background of who is giving you their opinion about a product is so important. All right, let's jump into awards competitions. So here are just some of the awards competitions that I'm aware of in cocoa and chocolate. I think there are 10 here. So the Cocoa of Excellence, I think, does a fabulous job. What they're doing is they're looking at what is the potential for cocoa beans to be converted into chocolate. And so they evaluate the cocoa beans, they evaluate the liquor, and then they evaluate finished chocolate. And I think that their methodology, which is on their website, it's open source, anybody can go follow it, is a really good example for people to follow. The International Chocolate Awards is interesting. It's probably the biggest awards in the world when it comes to evaluating chocolate and confectionery. They are fairly open when it comes to publishing their methodology, but they're not as open as I think they need to be. I don't think they're as transparent as certainly as I would like them to be, and as I think the industry should require them to be about all of the processes. For example, how many people enter, how many awards are actually given, what the process is for eventually deciding which level of award is given. I think that there should be a little bit more transparency, or a lot more transparency there. From them, it's the Academy of Chocolate Awards. Everything that I would say about the International Chocolate Awards, I would say I would double for the Academy of Chocolates. They are far less transparent. You don't know how many people entered. You really don't know anything about the judging methodology. You don't know who the judges are. In the end, it's a black box. Some number of people enter some things, and in the end, a group of people whom you don't know gives them some awards, right? The Northwest Chocolate Festival, they do publish who the judges are, but otherwise you don't know anything about the process. It's a black box, right? Some number of people enter, and at the end, some people win some awards, but you don't know anything about how that process goes through. That's also true of the International Chocolate Salon, Taste TV. Historically, it appears to be that if you are an exhibitor, right, it looks like you might have a better chance of winning an award than if you're not an exhibitor. And some people have said that that is an unfair way. Well, unfair is the wrong word. That's not a clear and transparent way to run a competition. But I understand exactly what they do it. They're there to reward the people who participate in their festivals, and it's their awards and their festivals. They can do whatever it is they want. It's just be aware of the fact, which is really, really important. The AVPA is the Agency for the Valorization of Agricultural Products. It was founded, I think, last year, 2021, and what they're doing is they are is they're looking at evaluating from a very, very French perspective, chocolates that are made in producing countries. So you can be a cocoa grower who's manufacturing chocolate. You can be a chocolate maker who's buying beans from your origin. But the whole idea of the AVPA awards is they're focusing on chocolate, which is manufactured in a producing country. We have some idea who the judges are. We knew who the head judge is. We don't know a whole lot about the process that's gone through in terms of determining what goes on. And at the end, again, it's a black box. We have some awards at the other end. Interestingly enough, I'm going to throw in competitions like the Coupe du Monde de la Patisserie and the National and World Pastry Team Championships. So the Coupe du Monde is still going on. The National and World Pastry Team Championships are no longer going on, unfortunately. But these are global competitions where they put chefs in a room over the course of 1 to 3 days. And these chefs are responsible or often teams of chefs are responsible for producing a broad range of items, not all of which contain chocolate, but many of them do. What's really important here is that the judging criteria are really well understood, right? And that the panels of judges are in fact practicing professionals. So what you will do is, when I was involved in the World Pastry Team Championship, the head of the jury was Jacques Therese, right? And we had people like Albert Adria, whose brother Ferran Adria was the chef at El Bulli. So Albert Adria was a judge. I mean, it just really top quality people, just people who really know what it is that they're doing, who are the judges. You know who they are. The judge, you can see them as they're judging. You can watch them do this. It's just a really fabulous, way to approach judging of products. And then finally, we have things like the Good Taste Awards in the UK and the Good Food Awards here in the United States. They're not 100% chocolate, but they do include chocolate and confectionery categories. And so these are just, and this is just a small number of them, right? And, and they don't track each other. So a product that wins an award in one competition, maybe a gold perhaps, might not even merit a bronze in another competition. Really, really interesting thing about that. So there's a disclaimer. Number one is I was hired by the people who organized the National World Pastry Team Championships. I wasn't involved in the judging per se, but I was involved in the overall administration and of the World Pastry Forum and the awards. I was involved in behind the scenes aspects of it. And I just wanted to let everybody know that, my observations about the awards are based on personal experience over the course of 8 to 10 years of being associated with the awards. Totally above board, great group of people trying to do really, really wonderful work and to grow competence globally in these areas and awareness globally in these areas. So really, really important. Cocoa of Excellence, many people may not know this, but I was involved in creating an alternative to spider graphs for the visualization of flavor and working with them. It's what's called a radial pie chart. Many people are using radial pie charts now, but I was working with the Cocoa of Excellence to try to find a better way to communicate about flavor in their evaluations of the cocoa, of the liquor and the chocolate they were making. It's just fabulous fun working with Ed Seguin and Brigitte Laliberte and their team to put these things together. International Chocolate Awards, I've been a judge at the International Chocolate Awards in the UK in the world finals, in the world round, in the United States for the Americas round, as well as down in Peru. I was a judge generally for 2 different years there. And then for 1 year, I was also a member of the grand jury in the alcoholic beverages category. So I have an insider perspective on the way the International Chocolate Awards work, although I have not been asked to return as a judge since 2017. And that's because of differences of opinion with the organizers of the awards about, again, this notion of openness and transparency and data sharing and things like that. And before I go a little further on this, what I do want to do is I want to jump over to the Chocolate Life and specifically to the post for today's room, right? So for people who are not regular visitors here, I do create an individual post for every single one of these live streams. And you'll see that the background that I'm using for today's live stream matches the image, which is at the top. I do that, so it makes it easier to find things. But as you go through, one of the things that I have done, so again, background and history, is that you can go and find out what I think about some of the awards programs. So I've written about the International Chocolate Awards, the 2018 European Awards, the International, the Americas Finalists, awards analysis, and things about how I think we might be a better job in terms of thinking about customer service, how awards could be better with customer service. There have been 2 live streams that talk about quality as well. And so there are the links to these live streams that talk about quality. If I am a good boy and I refresh this, what you'll know is what I've done is I've also downloaded the PowerPoint that I've been presenting. It's in PDF format. It's here. If what you'd like to do is you'd like to download the presentation that I've been making, you can download the presentation that I'm making so that you can follow along to this live stream at some other point, and you can read everything. So you don't actually have to worry about necessarily being able to connect to every single word which is in the presentation that we've got here today. So I wanted to talk about that with the International Chocolate Awards, because the first articles, the ones with the cups in them, are mostly about the International Chocolate Awards, because I've never been while I have been invited to be a judge at the Academy of Chocolate, I don't generally have an excuse to travel to London, right, when the awards are being judged. And so it's like, oh, if you just happen to be in a neighborhood during this particular period of time and you'd like to judge, would you judge? I don't know if they were sending judging samples internationally during the last couple of years during COVID, but if they were, I wasn't asked to participate. Like no ill will, it's just it hasn't worked in terms of timing. The Good Food Awards is an interesting one here in the United States. I was involved in the committees which put together the original set of judging guidelines for the chocolate bar competition, and then was also a member of the committee which organized the judging for the confectionery competition. And then I was also a judge in the confectionery competition for 2 years. I can say that the criteria for judging, as different people have come into the committee, have changed over the course of the past couple of years. And I declined to continue to be a judge after 1 year where members of the jury took it on themselves to override one of the primary selection criteria for a category within the judging. That basically, it's like, once a product got to this round of judging, it was deemed to be quote unquote sustainable, right? And that was not a criterion that was supposed to be judged. And a group of judges, different table, I won't go into the process in depth, but a group of judges said, oh, here's an ingredient in a product. We don't think this ingredient is sustainable, therefore we're going to disqualify the product, right? And I raised a red flag, to raise my hand, to the people who were organizing the competition today. And I said, this is totally wrong. And I have not been involved in any level with the organization or the presentation of the awards since. Mutual decision. And then finally, there was in the 2000 something called the Next Generation Chocolatier competition. The first year, I believe, was organized by Pierre Chouard of Vintage Chocolates and Curtis Vreeland, a consultant into the industry. And then after it had been going 1 or 2 years, Curtis invited me to be the head judge. And so I worked with Curtis to completely revamp the entire judging criteria and guidelines, and then oversaw the live judging with people. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the process entirely because, thinking about, right, we have a group of people with diverse tastes. They're tasting diverse products. What is it that we reward? And this came up, during the Good Food Awards 1 year, is that we had all the places full except one for a recommendation for the next round of judging. And we had 2 pieces, one of which was still yet another salted butter caramel. We'd already had, caramels pass through. And another one was, oh, here's a product. I might have been a marzipan product, and it was doing something. Well, it was a marzipan product. I remember specifically, and they're doing some really interesting things in the flavor of marzipan, something you wouldn't normally see. And so, what are we going to reward when it comes to good foods, just from a taste perspective? Still yet another salted butter caramel, or somebody who's doing something really new and interesting. I was voting on the side of innovation. And so I took experiences like that. And when I'm thinking about how I would think about rewarding entries into a competition, that is something that I think about a lot. So is this still yet another example of something that we've tasted 700 examples for? Or is what it is we're going to do is we're going to reward innovation? Interesting question. It can go either way. I think it depends upon, obviously it is a conversation that people in the jury should have with each other. But when it comes to quality, it's an interesting kind of question. In our basket of attributes, how are we going to value innovation? Right? Even if we, quote unquote, not really a fan of marzipan ourselves, and I know that there are people who aren't, right? But are we going to go look at that marzipan on face value for what it is and then say, ooh, this is really interesting? Yeah, right? So how do we value innovation? It's just really, even though we just really, really love salted butter caramel, it's like, yeah, really, really interesting question. But what I wanted to say is that, I've been involved in judging at a bunch of different levels since about 2002. And I did it for well over a decade. And I'm still do it professionally. People give me their products. Well, they don't always give me, but I get their products and I'm asked to provide my professional evaluation of them. And these are aspects of the evaluation that I personally, bring to my writing and my conclusions about them. It's just not, oh, here's a piece of chocolate. It tastes of fruit, right? But it tastes of red fruit. It tastes of cherries. I mean, it's from Madagascar or someplace like that. All right, right. There's a bit more nuance, and I try to get historical influences and other kind of influences to provide broader context in what's going on. For me, in my basket of attributes, when I think about quality and I think about my role communicating about quality, these are the things that are important to me. They're in my basket of attributes. As a judge, they're in my basket of attributes. It's what I bring, my history, to the judging table. And I think it's important that whenever you look towards someone to provide an opinion, that you understand what their background and their biases are, to understand what it is that's informing their opinion. All right. So when I think about, for example, the International Chocolate Awards and the Academy of Chocolate Awards, the Northwest Chocolate Festival, International Chocolate Salon, things like that, there are a bunch of questions I want to know, right? So are the actual judging and scoring methodologies made public? And in this respect, I think the International Chocolate Awards does a better job than almost everybody else, right? You can go online and you can find the actual judging sheets that they use. You can look at the rubric, right, that they use to be able to determine. Now, I have copies of them downloaded. I don't have permission to present them, so I didn't put them into this presentation, but it's something that you might want to go look. You can find the judging sheets. And you can decide to agree with them or disagree with them, but they are available online. Really, really good. So how complete is the public disclosure about the judges? Well, so for many years, again, this is in the context of the International Chocolate Awards, for each one of the competitions, there would be a page that would list the judges for that particular competition. I don't think they were particularly consistent about how they did that. I mean, certainly, and they certainly didn't start from the beginning. And so you actually don't know who are the judges. In general, if you tried to find out who the judges were for the chocolate and confectionery category at the Good Food Awards, You certainly couldn't find it online, and I don't know that they would provide it to you if they gave it to you. The Academy of Chocolate, I don't think that you have any way of knowing who judged anything in particular, so you don't understand what is this going on. The International Chocolate Salons is a black box. You have no idea who's doing the judging there. The Northwest Chocolate Festival does publish a list of judges, really, really important. To do that, but it would be interesting for them to disclose, oh, I've also been a judge in X and Y and Z. So, for example, is the head of the jury for one also the head of the jury for another? How does that person's particular biases and preferences, right, in one jury affect their biases and preferences in another jury? Just, again, important to know, because it does really inform, if you go take a look at things, how particular products, how particular makers, how particular styles of products are preferred by particular groups of judges, right? So how transparent are the organizations about reporting the data? And the answer is that, in my particular opinion, so from my perspective, all of them get a failing grade when it comes to reporting the data. All of them appear to go out of their way to make it difficult for anybody to take a look at all of the winners, right, and be able to try to pick out any patterns in the data. And if you go and take a look at this, I'm sharing my screen in today's post. This thoughts on International Chocolate Awards, European Bean to Bar, and the Americas finalists. One of the things that I do, and again, this third one here, more awards analysis, what you'll do is you'll see that I have taken just the publicly available information and tried to figure out if there are some patterns, right? So in particular, for example, in the 2018, International European Bean to Bar Chocolate Awards, right? If it turned out to be just a tremendous amount of work, but I can tell you which origin of cocoa bean, right, among all of the makers that reported the origin of beans that they use, I can tell you which origin won the most awards, right? And it turned out to be Nicaragua, which is counterintuitive. And the question is, why Nicaragua? Because Mikkel Friisholm from Denmark, right, uses exclusively, or did at the time, exclusively Nicaragua. He entered a buttload of bars into the competition, and his bars won a lot of awards. So Nicaragua won more awards in the European competition than, right, Madagascar or Ecuador or Peru, or Venezuela, which are sort of, intuitively the origins that you think would win more awards. When we go back to the Americas round, you want to say, okay, what is the most awarded origin, right? And it turns out that the most awarded origin is Ecuador. Well, that makes sense. But like for the European Bean Bar competition, there's a particular reason. It's Picari won a lot of awards. And so because Picari won a lot of awards, Ecuador was the most popular origin. When you went to the world round, the Asia Pacific round, you find a similar kind of thing. The most highly awarded origin is Taiwan. Why? Because Fuwan won a lot of awards. It requires an extraordinary amount of handwork to be able to pull apart the data that are provided by the awards organizations to be able to figure out these patterns, right? To the point where I've been told by the organizers, well, we can't tell you what the origin of the beans is because we don't have permission from the maker because they didn't provide it. It's like, post hoc rationalizations that to me don't make any sense. So really, really important when it comes to that stuff. How transparent do the organizations, or how transparent are they about reporting the data? How many people entered? How many entrants were there? If there are multiple levels, a triage, what are the numbers who go from, how many entrants were rejected, for example, because the products were damaged in shipment. So we had this many entrants, this many people went through the triage round, this percentage was seen to be no chance whatsoever entering into awards, so we're not going to subject the judges to it. I mean, none of that information, which will help us understand, right, how the industry is progressing. And I personally, would love to be able to have that data. de-identified. I don't want to be able to single out any particular maker who didn't make it through. I just want to be able to say, here's what's going on. And unfortunately, it's impossible to do that. And then finally, one of the things I have is that if I am a judge at the Good Food Awards, or I'm a judge at the International Chocolate Awards, or I'm a judge at the Academy of Chocolate Awards, there's no public thanks. These are volunteer positions. These organizers depend entirely upon the goodwill of volunteers. And this is a pet peeve. I'm going to get to a section on pet peeves, but this is just something that I think is incomprehensible, right? That there is not more public thanks to the people who make these awards possible. I'm going to jump really quickly. Keith says, I can imagine that even judges become jaded to another XYZ item. If you're rewarding innovation, then timing is key, no, and shouldn't innovation be part of the criteria for submission? I think at one point the International Chocolate Awards did have an area, did have actually a judging criteria for innovation. I could enter my product in this category for consideration as being an innovative product. I don't think that's the way to go do it. I think that innovation should be a criterion that any judge, anyone can raise their hand and say, I think this is new and different and cool. And then it goes to a group of people who can decide to further explore that opportunity. But the answer is, I can get jaded to an item within a competition. If I'm sitting down and I'm doing, single origin chocolate bars, right? Single origin micro batch chocolate bars. And I get a flight and I have 9 different chocolate bars, all of them made from the same origin. I can be jaded by the time I get halfway through the flight. It's like, I don't get, it's like, these things are impossible to tell apart. I don't get what's going on here. Why are we rewarding this? So yeah, judges can get jaded. If I am any judge, right? If I'm any example, you can get jaded in the middle of a competition. It's disappointing. I can tell you, it's really, really disappointed. So David, not sure where you are connecting from today, where in the world you are, but watching on LinkedIn. Yeah, my pleasure. I mean, part of this is hopefully sensitizing each one of you, right, to a broader set of issues, so that when you actually look at rewards results, right, you'll take them perhaps with a grain of salt, but also, what it is that, part of my process, what it is that I value, what it is that I look, how I think about my work as a judge. So in general, what do I think of Ecuadorian chocolate or cocoa quality, such as the Arriba variety? So just starting off, it's a really interesting question, Dave. First one, which Arriba is the name we give to a flavor, right? So the variety is Nacional. So Ecuadorian Nacional is primarily a Forastero. It has some fine flavor genetics into it, but it is Ecuadorian Nacional has a particular flavor profile. That flavor profile is often thought of as floral, sort of jasmine orange blossom is one way to think of it. And it got the name Arriba because people would come into the port of Guayaquil and they go, where's the cocoa? And people would go, Arriba, Arriba, upriver to the Port of Vinces, right? And that's where people could go get the Nacional. Just a little bit of history there about the use of the word. Like anything in cocoa and chocolate, Dave, I think the answer, let me put that back up on the screen, is it depends. I have seen sublime chocolate being made with Arriba, very well tended plants, care and post-harvest, all the way through the end, just really, really well handled, in the transformation from beans through roasting into chocolate. I have tasted some transcendent stuff, some of it made in Ecuador, some of it made outside of Ecuador, right? And then I've tasted stuff which is trash. It's like nobody really thought about, proper post-harvest processes. The person who roasted it had no idea how to handle the roast. and they were doing it in a little Indian wet grinder, and they had too much pressure on the stones, and so I could taste the stones in the chocolate. So I think like any. I was having this conversation the other day. I forget exactly where. It might have been last Friday. But I think that the goal of the chocolate maker, it was last Friday, the goal of the chocolate maker is to maximize the potential of what they got. The genetic potential of the tree, right, is influenced by how the tree is tended, and then through post-harvest processing, and then through the transformation of the beans into finished chocolate. And our goal, I'm using R in the broad sense here because I'm not involved in making chocolate on a daily basis. But our goal here is to maximize the potential, the genetic potential of the beans. And some people were better at it than others, right? And that's true. And so, and it doesn't depend on the specific variety of beans. I think there are some geniuses who can make stunningly fabulous chocolate out of CCM 51. I think there are some geniuses who can make stunningly fabulous chocolate out of, bog standard, West African Amelonado. So, it all comes down to the skill of everybody involved in the process, from the farm through the factory. And Dave, I hope that answers your question there. So my pet peeves, and I alluded to this a little earlier: data hoarding. Right now, nobody knows how big the specialty chocolate world is, right? So, since the start of Scharfenberger in 1996 through to today, there's disagreement about how many small chocolate makers there are, right? I think there are well over 2,000 globally, right? I just look at my Instagram feed, right? The people who participate in all these groups on Facebook, there are thousands of small chocolate makers. Are all of them sustainable businesses? No. Do all of them, purchase large quantities of beans? No. But there are thousands of new specialty chocolate makers. And we have no idea exactly how many there are. We don't know exactly how much cocoa as a group they're purchasing. We don't know how much chocolate they're selling and the value associated with that, right? We have no way of knowing right now. Nobody is willing to do the research. I mean, and within the specialty chocolate world, there are only a handful of companies that have the resources to even begin thinking about paying for the research, right? And even if they wanted to do it, would they make it public? I don't know the answer to the question. It is a failure of imagination of the awards programs. It's also a failure of imagination of the FCIA and the FCCI, right? To go, oh, let's do formal market research with validated methodologies, which do not presuppose the answer, right? Before they start off, right? To say, okay, how big is this industry? Now, every single one of the awards competitions has now got data stretching back a decade or more, right? And they know how many people entered, they know what they entered from, they know everything about the products that were entered, and yet they're sitting on top of all of this data, doing absolutely nothing with it, right? Data hoarding is like, oh my gosh, I've been a champion of this industry for 20 some odd years, right? And I don't have access to basic data which will help me communicate about the industry, right? To exactly the kind of customers who would look at this and go, oh, now I understand why I want to buy this product, right? And so for me, it's just a complete and total failure of imagination. And it is one thing that bothers me most about the awards, right? Another one is that once you win an award, it's up to you to figure out how to monetize it. I hate the word monetize coming out of the internet, but the awards manufacturers, the awards givers themselves do almost nothing to promote the awards. Now, I had a chance, I made a proposal to the FCIA and the Heirloom Cacao Preservation Fund a couple of years ago, I want to say 2018, 2019, not sure exactly when, to actually say, let's go do some research about what is the value of getting an HCP nomination, right? So can we go find out how much this particular recipient was selling before they won the award, what the price they got for their beans was before they won the award, and then we compare that. Are they selling more now, right? Are they able to get a higher price for it now? Now they got the HCP designation, and they were not interested. Or I should say they were at least not interested in having me do it. But they seemed to indicate that they hadn't even thought about the economic impact of what they were doing when they were putting together the awards. And for me, that's just an opportunity lost. And by the way, the same thing is true of Cocoa of Excellence. I mean, unfortunately, I mean, as much as I really do appreciate the work that they've done and the integrity of the people involved and everything they're trying to do, I think it's just a lost opportunity to figure out what the economic impact of being given one of these awards is on the cocoa side of things. So no promotional support, I think is a real challenge. Where it's like once they've had their awards ceremony and they've given you the awards, nothing, right? And so it's up to every single award winner to figure out what to do with their awards. Again, a pet peeve. Then there's this whole notion of what do the awards actually mean, right? And so I think the best example of this is I was in a Facebook group and somebody said, oh, I went and bought a gold medal winning bar from competition X, right? And it was trash. It was awful, right? And I read what it is that people said about it from the awards competition, and I try to compare it with what I tasted, and it was like it wasn't the same. I was not comparing things night and day, right? And so, what do the awards mean? It's a really interesting problem. I mean, so Emil, who is a regular listener Emil, if you're here today, thank you very much, from Austria, pointed out that he makes a white chocolate from natural cocoa butter, which was an award winner at the Academy of Chocolate Awards, but he can't sell it locally, right? For some reason, the Austrians, his customers, don't appreciate what it is that he was doing. So in that particular case, the value of that award might not have contributed directly to increased sales of that product in his home market. Maybe it was he could put the award up on the wall and it influenced some people some way. But what does it mean, right? So what does the public see when they see that symbol that said this won an award, right? So if it's 2020, right, and it says, oh, I won best chocolate bar in the Americas in 2017, right? It's 3 years later, 5 years later now, right? Is there any connection between the chocolate that won the award and the chocolate that I've got now, right? So I think that in that respect, awards can be incredibly deceptive, right? In this, because they are often attached to things that did not win the actual award. That's a really problem. Hey, Emil, all right, glad to see you in the room today, and I hope you don't mind that I brought you up. I appreciate that. So what do awards mean to the industry, right? So yeah, it's bragging rights. 5 people get together at a bar, at a conference and say, hey, I won 17 awards this year, or I've won more than anybody. Yeah, what does that mean to you? Because there is no central way to be able to look at the awards winners. There's no easy way. It's just an enormous amount of handwork involved to be able to grab the data that is publicly available. I've done it. I got spreadsheets, and I'll show you if somebody is interested. I can go through that whole process of what it takes. But to the industry, right, practically speaking, they are valueless because there is no learning that the industry gets from these things. There is no value that the industry as a whole can point to and says, oh, awards are responsible for an extra 100 million in sales a year, or awards are good for, practically speaking, right? The awards to the industry have almost zero value. To the winners, it's up to the winner to be able to derive value from the award. They need to figure out what they're going to do with the award in terms of their own promotion, their own marketing, their own sales efforts in order to be able to figure it out. So for some companies, right, it may not move the needle on sales, right? For other companies, it may move the needle on sales a lot. So meaning of awards, like when we think of the basket of attributes of quality, meaning is all over the map. It's, what I choose to make of it, right? And in reality, I think that the way that the awards organizers present the value of the awards is different from the way they're actually used in public. Stepping back 30,000 feet. All right. Number one, I made this notion are awards dangerous, and the notion of unintended consequences. And this is a comment which is going to get, I think, a fair amount of feedback. I think it is fundamentally harmful that an organization which runs the biggest tasting institute, runs the biggest awards program, and they're looking at incorporating their tasting institute training into the judging for the awards program. What this says is that there is going to be a fairly monolithic model for evaluating what quote unquote quality is and how the judging is done. I think that's fundamentally a problem. We want more diversity, right? What happens if the only wine reviewer in the world was Robert Parker, right? And you decided you didn't like, big, high alcohol, fully, really plummy, jammy wines, right? Robert Parker, if he was the only wine critic in the world, would be useless to you. I think we need more diversity when it comes to approaches to judging, not less diversity, right? That the notion that there is a group of people with a black box methodology, right? That they're teaching to people to learn how to taste, and they're using that same methodology for judging is just too soon narrowing the pool, right? To a very, very limited way about thinking about chocolate and judging chocolate. And I think it is fundamentally wrong. And I think it is fundamentally harmful to the growth of the industry. Because what it says is, if the judges consistently win an award, these kinds of products, there is pressure to make those kind of products so that they will win awards, right? And what that does is it says it narrows innovation. It says there's going to be fewer opportunities for people to go out and make products which are outside the quote unquote norm, which are outside what would be considered to be award winning, right? And that's a problem. Right? We're only 25 years into this thing called specialty chocolate, this new chocolate movement, craft chocolate, whatever it is, artisan chocolate, whatever you want to call it. Right? We're only 25 years in, and it is way too soon to be able to say this is what good chocolate is. Right? And it's way too soon to let a very, very small group of people determine what makes good chocolate. So yeah, I think that the awards can be dangerous. Another way that they can be dangerous is something that I mentioned earlier. I go into a store and I look at 47 brands of chocolate I've never seen before, but 5 of them have award stickers on them. And of those 5, 3 of those stickers are for chocolate that won awards in different years, right? People are going to go look at those awards, buy the chocolate, hate the chocolate, right? Just because it doesn't win an award. All that award signals is that of the products that were entered, right, the judges like these and like them enough to give them an award. It doesn't say anything about like this is the best chocolate in the world or anything like that. It just says of the entries that came into the awards this year, the judges like this one, right? But the person who's looking at that will look at the award and think, as often as not, I don't get it. I don't understand why the judges like this product. And so in that respect, it could be an unintended consequence that people will start to immediately devalue the awards because they're not a reliable indicator of anything. They bought the bar, they hated it. I can't rely on it as an indicator. So there are unintended consequences, right? When we don't say, listen, the judge or the organizer should say, listen, you can only use this award, right, on the product that actually won the award, right? So if you want to use it in your marketing and your website and say, we won this award for this product in this year, knock yourself out. But if you actually want to put the sticker, right, you need to put the sticker on the product that won the award, not a product 2 years later or 3 years later or anything like that, right? And in this way, right, you alleviate the problem that somebody will say, I don't get why this chocolate was an award winner. And so the label itself is not reliable, right? Really, really, really careful about that. Emil, it is a marketing tool. It is ego flattering. I absolutely get that, right? But the broader point that I wanted to make was that it is up to you, to figure out what to do with it. It's up to you to figure out how to use it as a marketing tool. The organizers of the awards actually don't do a good job of providing you with materials or a platform or anything that can be used to promote your business. Once they've actually announced the awards, it's just like they go radio silent for the most part, for until the next year. So the use of award stickers is also responsible to the makers who get it if they use it for many years, even though their product. Absolutely, I agree with you. It is, in fact, that is part of the challenge. It is left to the maker to determine whether or not they're going to use the award to promote their product. And I think personally that there should be guidance from the awards givers that says, if we find that you're using the product or using the award improperly, that we will not allow you to enter into the awards for a year, for example, right? Or if you're currently in the awards, we're not going to give you anything. I mean, there should be consequences, right, for using the awards in a disingenuous fashion, and not just letting every single chocolate maker decide how they're going to use the award. I think that we've seen in so many aspects of the industry that kind of self-policing doesn't end well. And so, yeah, I would like to believe that everybody would be open and honest and about the way they use the awards, but I don't think it is. So the future of awards. Maybe once a year, somebody comes to me and says, "Oh, we'd like to have a new awards program," and they tell me what it is that they want to do. And I think I don't think I politely decline. Usually I decline because I don't think that the way they're planning to organize the awards brings anything of value. Do we need another International Chocolate Awards with a slightly different set of rules? Do we need another Academy of Chocolate Awards or Northwest Chocolate Festival Awards with a slightly different set of rules? The answer is, I don't know what value it is to the industry. Companies are already complaining that these awards are far too expensive. It can easily cost, some people invest, thousands of dollars or thousands of euros a year in entering this competition. I think it's actually fairly cheap marketing, right, when you think about what it is. And so I wouldn't actually complain that it's too expensive in that regard. But there is an overhead associated with it in terms of time and attention to detail. And then there is the need, should you win an award, to have a plan in place in order to be able to use the award in a way that gives you a return on investment for winning it, right? And so I would be careful about that. But I don't think that, given where things are going, I don't think that there is a way to do another awards program in the way that all of the awards programs are currently instigated or instituted. I think that if what you wanted to do was to create a new awards program, it would have to be fundamentally organized a different kind of way. So one way to do it, for example, right, and I think this represents a real interesting opportunity, and I've suggested it to a couple of people, would be go to retailers and distributors. So here in the United States, you might go to A Priori, you might go to Cocoa Runners in the UK, you might go to a bunch of other companies, and you guys tell us, I'm using guys metaphorically, right? So, you are in a position to understand what sells. You're in a position to understand what people think about. You are evaluating chocolate on a daily basis, right? So why don't we use your data, right, as the input, or some input, not 100% of the input for some awards. Now, you as a maker, right, don't have to actually enter into an awards competition. You don't have to send particular product, you don't have to do anything. All this evaluation is being done by the people who are selling your chocolate. Dennis Van Essen at High Five, and the Netherlands in the EU, he's got his perception. He understands what his market likes. Obviously Cocoa Runner understands what their market likes. We have A Priori and other people here in the United States who understand what the US market is like. I'm sure we'd find people in other parts of the world. I think that, if there were a way to be able to engage the people who are responsible for selling the chocolate on a daily basis, and tap into that network, and use that as a sort of foundation, and then work with some individuals not in terms of, we're going to gather them in a competition sense, but other people who are in the active process of tasting and evaluating chocolate professionally, and right, for people who are doing it for hobby. I think there's a way to actually capture the kind of data that we're looking for, and to be able to give consumers a really, really good understanding of what to appreciate, and what it is that they are likely to encounter when it is that they purchase a piece of chocolate. We want to help the purchasing decision and make them feel good about it. That ultimately, that's one of the reasons why there are ratings, right, around wine, or ratings around beer. We want to help people make good decisions about the chocolate they're buying. And I don't know that right now, the way the awards are constituted, that they provide that kind of guidance. As we head out, we're a couple of minutes over the hour. What I want to do is take this one last question from Helmut. What do you think using the whole cocoa pod, including the shell, for making chocolate? So a little bit off topic for this. First off, Helmut, I think that there is a fundamental gap in the industry's vision, right? When we look at the cacao tree, right, the only thing that 99% of the people who are involved in transforming the raw material into finished product, the only thing they think about is properly fermented cocoa beans. And even not even properly fermented. They're thinking about the beans, and they're thinking about oxidation colors and flavors, right? So chocolate is brown. Now, it is possible to take the juice. It is possible to take the juice and then to be able to remove the moisture from it and to create some sort of sweetener, which can be used in the chocolate. But if you do not get rid of the acidity that's associated with sugar, the chocolate tastes awful. And the chemical composition of that sugar may be such that it has some side effects like, oh, you can't bring the temperatures of chocolate above 40 degrees centigrade. Or there's something about what it is that you're doing that says, well, it's the color is not bake stable, right? So we need to be really careful when we start thinking about how we alter the post-harvest processes, and we start thinking about upcycling ingredients, what it is that we do that with them. So is it a better thing to take the juice and convert it into a sweetener that we would use to make chocolate? It's an interesting idea, but as I talked about last week with the Calabout Evo Cow and the Felquin cacao-free couverture, this stuff is basically inedible, right? In my opinion, right? And so it's a good idea. I don't know that anybody has done a really, really good job of it yet, and I'd be waiting to see what they do. But taking that juice, I don't think that taking the juice and bottling it for drinking is necessarily the answer to the question, because it's a very, very high sugar product. So it's like any other fruit juice. And if people are worried about sugar intake, going to cacao juice as opposed to some other kind of juice, not all that interesting to me. Could you use it as an ingredient? So absolutely use it as an ingredient in making it a sorbet, using an ingredient at the cocktail bar, using the juice as an ingredient for many, many things. Absolutely. I think that's an underexplored area. And whether you take the juice as it is and pasteurize it, you concentrate it, and use it, both of the things I think are really, really interesting. Or what you do is you take the juice and you turn it into vinegar, right? And I've had some fabulous cacao juice vinegar. At my first introduction to it was in 2010 on the Hacienda Tranquilidad with Volker Lehmann. And he had some stuff that had been barrel aged for a number of years. Absolutely stunning. I've had some in Ecuador, some people who are taking the juice and reducing it and turning it into what the Italians would call a condimento. So it's a balsamic-like ingredient, but because it's not actually right, fits into the geographical indicator, the AO, so DOC in Italy. It's not, legally you can't call it balsamic, but if you have something which is sort of like a balsamic and it's made through flavoring and through evaporation mechanically, you can call it a condimento. I can tell you that a cacao juice condimento is an absolutely fabulous, wonderful product. It's usable in a lot of different areas. I was part of an attempt to start importing it here into the United States into a retail chocolate chain where what they could do is they could incorporate it into their cold drinks menu. Really, really fabulous. It's also great on salad, and it's just a fabulous kind of thing. I have actually tried some whole pod chocolate. So there was somebody in the United States who had worked on a patent pending process, just basically take the entire thing, pods and placenta and seeds, and then transform it into a chocolate-like product. Um, I think that there are a number of challenges, one of which, every time you take the pod out of the farm, and you do not allow it to decompose in the farm, you need to find a way to replace the nutrients that are associated with that material, and it's most of the pod. And so any action that takes the pods off the farm that doesn't consider replacing the nutrient value, got to fertilize somehow, got to replace it, is a non-starter, right? So I don't have any problem people taking pods off the farm and then like converting it into biochar, composting it with other things so it can be used as a fertilizer. But if you're just going to remove it from the farm, I think it's a bad idea. There are experiments. I've personally tasted a couple of them, one of which is that it turns out that there's a fair amount of fat in the pod. And what you can do is you can extract the fat from the pod and you can use it as a cooking oil or frying oil, and it's okay, right? It's interesting. But you can also take the cabos, the pod material, and what you can do is you can dry it out. Really, really energy intensive. All right? Dewatering, drying things out is incredibly expensive in terms of energy. So this is a good place where solar energy is a good way to think about this, or a good technology to use when doing this. But you can then take the pod, you can dry it out, and then you can grind it and turn it into a flour. And you can use that flour, right? Oh, you can use it to make funnel cakes in the fat from the pods, for example. There are people who are working in this, including, Big 10 chocolate companies whose names I'm not going to promote them by mentioning their names, but big chocolate companies are involved in these efforts. And so, yeah, I think it's a great idea to experiment with different ways. I mean, I've had cheese crackers made with flour from cocoa pods. Fabulous. Interesting texture. Different, no gluten, right? Interesting texture to them, as you might imagine. But yeah, no, I think that there are lots of opportunities there. But I don't think that taking the pod, number one, is legally. You'd have to get, the FDA in the United States. You'd have to get the people who are in charge of the Codex Alimentarius in the EU to be able to create an entirely new standard of identity for a chocolate which included cacao pod material, right? In Germany, the authorities said you couldn't manufacture Ritter tried to make a chocolate which was sweetened using cacao fruit sugar. And the German government said, or the German authorities said, they legally couldn't call it chocolate because for some reason, the fact that the sugar came from, anyway, just a mess. So I think there are some interesting things that can be done. But if you're going to talk about making a whole pod chocolate, you'd have 100 years of legal infrastructure which need to be overturned. And I don't know that's going to happen very quickly. I mean, white chocolate was invented in the late 1930s. And it wasn't until the early 2000s, was it 2004 or 2014? I forget, where the standard of identity for white chocolate was embedded into US law. So the FDA, CFR 21.163, there was a standard identity of white chocolate. And the chocolate industry had lobbied for this for decades. Prior to that, they were just using what are called temporary marketing permits, right, which allowed them to market their product as chocolate as long as it met certain criteria. And it took a lot of industry lobbying to actually be able to get the FDA to embed into law a standard of identity for white chocolate. So I think it's a really, really interesting concept. I think that there are better things to do. I mean, one thing to do with juice that I didn't mention is that, yeah, you can make vinegar with it, but you can also turn it into beer. You can turn it into wine, and you can distill it and turn it into a high-proof spirit. And there are many people who are doing that, and they're also turning it into liqueurs. So they might take a base spirit, cachaça, for example. You take a base spirit like cachaça, you would add some cacao fruit juice and some sugar, and you've got a liqueur, right? There are lots of ways to use this. and I think that are probably more practical in the short term than trying to get regulatory authorities around the world to change or to add some new standard of identity for this product, which would enable people to be able to use the whole pod in any particular way, or the placenta, or just lots of things. I mean, there are people who take the juice and they will add it to sugar and they'll make a syrup. I've seen a cooperative in Peru that will take the placenta and they'll chop the placenta, and what they'll do is they'll cook that down in the juice and they'll make a marmalade from it. Fabulously tasty. It's a really, really good idea. No added sugar, or very, very low added sugar, maybe a little pectin, something. Lots of things that can be done, right, with the juice. I mean, you can take the pulp, you can dehydrate it into fruit leather, right? Madre Chocolate has a triple chocolate bar in which they're using bits of dehydrated cacao pulp as fruit leather chips in the bar. Really, really fabulous. There are many, many things that can be done that don't require anything like changes in regulatory approval or changes in processes or anything can be done. And so I would encourage people to look in those directions first. And I can tell you, Helmut, that the chocolate that I tasted, this quote unquote whole pod chocolate, it wasn't very good. It had the wrong texture. It didn't have the right melt. It was interesting in many, many ways. It just didn't provide, in my experience, and I've had a bit of it, didn't provide a pleasant eating experience. So before we get done for today, I mean, that's the end of the presentation. What people can do is they can go to The Chocolate Life right now. Here's the post for today's live stream, and they can download today's presentation. There it is. Just click on the arrow. You can download the presentation if you want to, and you are a member. So one of the things I like to do is I'd like to encourage people to join The Chocolate Life, show their support. There's always a free level, right? But there are some, I don't have advertising, I don't have sponsorships. So if you'd like to support the work that I'm doing, you can join The Chocolate Life and support it. When you do become a member of The Chocolate Life, on every single post, there is the opportunity to throw comments. And so please, if you have a question, some comment you'd like, you can add them on YouTube. And so please, right? So here is the channel for The Chocolate Life on YouTube. If you're not a subscriber, please go and subscribe. If you'd like this video, share this video with friends. Also over on Instagram and Twitter, you can follow me there. Facebook. Your support is what makes it possible for me to do things on a daily basis, and look forward to having you back on future live streams. And speaking of future live streams, there's a post on The Chocolate Life where it is a calendar. So here's today's live stream, Judging Quality. On Friday, we're going to talk about continuous tempering. For those of you who are wondering, it's Tuesday. How come I don't have a guest? It's because I thought I was going to be traveling this week, and the whole schedule for April for scheduling guests sort of got turned upside down. And so I'm focusing more on topics this month on Tuesday because scheduling guests has been a little more of a challenge than it often is. So today we're judging quality. On Friday, we're going to go into tempering. This coming Tuesday, so a week from today, my guest is going to be Chantal Cody. Chantal, people may know her from her stint at Rococo. She's one of the co-founders of the Academy of Chocolate. She has been really instrumental in work down on the island of Grenada. And so Chantal is going to be my guest talking about all of those things, BR, before Rococo, to Grenada, and what it is that she's doing now. Don't have a topic for next Friday, but on Friday 19th, my special guests are going to be Ewald Wiberg and Jan Willem Jekel of Heinde and Ver in Rotterdam. I've had them on as guests before. Even before Clubhouse. And I commissioned them to do a special bar of chocolate for my 20th anniversary tasting last year. One of my favorite European chocolate makers. If you don't know who they are, please join me on the 19th with them. Friday, April 22nd, again, my schedule changed. We're going to be talking with Carlos Eichenberger of Danta Chocolate in Guatemala. And most importantly at all, on Friday, the 26th of April, Mickey Mastrati, who was the producer-director of The Dark Side of Chocolate and has released last week on the 23rd, so maybe 2 weeks ago, a new film, which is called The Chocolate War. which features Terry Collingsworth of the International Rights Advocates, who's been a guest here. Mickey is going to be my guest on the 26th, and we're going to be talking about The Chocolate Wars, his new movie, and what it is we learned, and how much things have changed or not since the introduction of the dark side of chocolate many, many years ago. 2 more points before we go. Thanks everybody for holding on. Number 1 is go take a look right at this this post at the Yale School of Management website about about companies that have withdrawn from Russia, decided not to do business. But it turns out that which chocolate companies are continuing to do business. They include Ferrero, if I responsible, if I spell properly, and what level they are. Just go take a look. So here we are, grade C. Go take a look and figure that out. If you have any information about anyone at Big Chocolate that's continuing to work in Russia, please let me know, and I will pass it along to the people who are organizing this important bit of research. And then finally, and this is in advance of my room with Mickey Mastrati, there's a new post went up this morning, top 5 ways people will try to defend slavery in cocoa. So if you're interested in the issue of illegal child labor, slavery in the cocoa supply chain, please go take a look at this. Let me know what you think. You can comment down below. Let me know if you think that it would make a good topic for a live stream in the future. I mean, it is something that I have been in discussion with Mickey about, and it is something that I plan to bring up on the 26th when we have a discussion with him. And with that, I want to say thanks everybody for being here today on another edition of the Chocolate Life Live, where what we've been doing is we've been talking about quality, judging quality, right? What is quality? How do we define it? If we have awards, how do we take these? How do we judge chocolate, right? And is there a good side? Is there a dark side? Is there a bad side to awards programs? And how can we take a look at them with a little more critical eye? And with that, thanks everybody for being here today. And remember, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong.